Welcome to Rome Before You Go, the podcast for people who want to understand the Eternal City before they ever set foot in it. I'm Sarah, your host, and across this series, I'll be sitting down with our resident Rome expert, Giovanni, to walk through everything a first-time visitor actually needs to know. Not a guidebook read aloud, not a list of monuments, a real conversation about the city, what it asks of you, what it gives back, and how to plan a trip that doesn't leave you exhausted and disappointed by day 3.
Hello, Sarah. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here. I've spent a long time helping visitors understand Rome, and I have to tell you, the most important conversations I have with travelers are the ones that happen before they leave home. Once you're already there, jet-lagged with the wrong shoes in the wrong season, you've already made the decisions that shape your trip. So I love that this is where we're starting.
That's exactly the spirit of this series. Over the next 12 episodes, we're going to cover where to stay, how to get around, which tickets you absolutely must book in advance, how to actually visit the Colosseum and the Vatican without losing your mind, how to eat well, how to order coffee without embarrassing yourself, and which neighborhoods reward your time. But before any of that, today, episode 1, we're going to ask the most fundamental question of all. Is Rome right for your trip? And if it is, how many days do you actually need? And when should you go?
These are not romantic questions, but they're the questions that decide whether you come home in love with Rome or relieved to leave it.
Let's start with the honest expectations. Giovanni, when someone tells you they're going to Rome for the first time, what do you wish you could say to them that nobody else will?
I wish I could say, Rome is going to be harder than you think. Not harder in a bad way, harder in a real way. People imagine Rome as a kind of warm, golden postcard. The fountain, the gelato, the scooter, the man in the linen shirt. And those moments exist. They genuinely do. But around them is a city of nearly 3 million people, with traffic, with noise, with broken pavement, with crowds that, in the summer, can feel claustrophobic, and with a pace that doesn't bend to your itinerary. Rome rewards patience. It punishes hurry. And most first-time visitors arrive in a hurry.
Let's break that down. Start with crowds. How bad are we talking?
It depends entirely on where and when. In April, May, June, September, and October, which are the most popular months, the major sites are heaving. The Colosseum on a Saturday morning in May, without a pre-booked ticket, can mean a 2-hour queue just to enter, and then another crowd inside. The Vatican museums, on the busiest days, see up to 30,000 visitors, 30,000, in a building. The Trevi Fountain at sunset in June is shoulder to shoulder, and people are holding their phones over their heads to take photos because they can't see the fountain through the bodies.
That sounds dystopian.
It can be, but here's the thing. Step 3 streets away from the Trevi Fountain at the same hour, and you'll find an empty piazza with an old man feeding a cat. The crowds in Rome are concentrated. The famous sites are dense, but the city is enormous, and most of it is not crowded at all. The trick is knowing when to be at the famous places and when to be elsewhere.
When to be at the famous places? Give me an example.
The Colosseum is busiest from about 10 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. So you go at 8:30 when it opens, or you go at 4 when the tour groups are heading to lunch, and the late afternoon light starts hitting the travertine. The Vatican museums are an entirely different problem. We'll cover them properly in episode 6, but the principle is the same. There are windows. Locals know them. Visitors who plan learn them. Visitors who don't line up in the sun.
Okay, crowds. Got it. Now cobblestones. I keep seeing warnings about this. Is it overhyped?
It is not overhyped. The historic center of Rome is paved in what we call Sanpietrini. They are small, irregular, black basalt cubes set into the ground centuries ago in many places, and they are beautiful. They are also brutal on your feet. If you are wearing flat sandals, ballet flats, dress shoes with thin soles, or anything fashionable but unsupportive, you will be in pain by lunchtime on day 1. By day 2, you may be walking like you've been injured. I've watched visitors abandon entire afternoons because their feet gave out.
So what's the answer?
Cushioned, supportive, broken-in walking shoes, not new shoes. Please, please do not buy new shoes for your trip. Break them in for 2 weeks at home first. And in the summer, the cobblestones get hot, so a closed shoe with breathable mesh is better than a sandal. The Italians know this. You will see Roman women in beautiful outfits and very practical shoes. Take the hint.
I've also heard the cobblestones can be slippery.
When wet, they are like a skating rink. When polished by centuries of foot traffic, they are slippery even when dry. Trastevere, in particular, has streets that slope down toward the river, and when it rains, you walk like you're on ice. Wide soles with grip, not flip-flops, not leather soles, nothing smooth.
Let's talk about heat, because the brochures show summer Rome and it looks magical, but I'm sensing you have feelings about this.
I have very strong feelings. Summer in Rome, especially July and August, is no longer the summer of 50 years ago. It is hot, often dangerously hot. 40 degrees Celsius, which is about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, used to be a rare day. Now it can stretch into weeks. The city is mostly stone and asphalt, which absorb heat all day and release it all night, so even at midnight the temperature might only drop to 30, which is the high 80s. There is no escape unless you have air conditioning, which not every hotel has.
Wait, hotels in Rome don't all have air conditioning?
Many do. But cheaper accommodations, older buildings, and some apartments do not. Or they have air conditioning that runs on a schedule, or that doesn't reach the upper floors, or that's so old it barely changes the temperature. Always check. Always ask. Read recent reviews from the same time of year you're traveling. This single factor can be the difference between sleeping well and lying awake at 3 in the morning, exhausted, in a pool of sweat.
That's vivid.
It's true. And then, during the day, the sun is direct. The piazzas have very little shade. The Forum and the Palatine, where you'll be walking among ruins, have almost no cover at all. People faint. The ambulances are out every summer day at the Colosseum. So if you're going in summer, you need to think like a Roman. You go out early. You come back to your hotel at 1. You rest until 4. You go out again in the evening when the city cools and comes alive.
Which is basically the siesta logic that we always dismiss as quaint.
It's not quaint. It's survival. And it's also one of the most pleasurable rhythms of Italian life, if you let it be. The midday rest is not a defeat. It's part of the experience.
So crowds, cobblestones, heat. The trinity of warnings. But you said Rome rewards patience. What does that actually mean? Because the word patience is overused in travel writing.
Let me give you an example. The first time most visitors see the Trevi Fountain, they push through the crowd, they take the photo, they throw the coin over their shoulder, and they move on. 20 minutes. Done. And what they take home is a photo and the memory of a crowd. But if you come back the next morning at 7, before the tour groups, when the sun is just hitting the marble and the only sound is the water and a few sweepers, you understand why people built that fountain. You see the way Neptune actually rides his shell chariot. You notice the 4 seasons in stone above. You see how the whole thing is wedged into the back of a palazzo, not standing alone like a monument, but pressed into the city. That second visit is the one you remember for the rest of your life. The first one is just a cue.
So patience in Rome means giving things 2 chances.
Patience in Rome means giving things time. Rome is layered, literally layered. You're walking on a city built on top of a city, built on top of a city. If you're moving too fast to notice the layers, you might as well be at a theme park. The Pantheon in 5 minutes is impressive. The Pantheon in 45 minutes is transformative. Same building, same stones, different experience entirely.
I want to come back to layers in a minute, but first let me ask the practical follow-up. Patience requires time. Which brings us to our second big topic. How many days do you actually need in Rome?
This is the question I am asked most often, and the honest answer is more than you think.
Let's put numbers on it. 3 days. What can you do in 3 days?
3 days in Rome is possible. People do it. I would not recommend it, but you can do it. In 3 days, you can see the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, the Palatine Hill, the Vatican Museums with the Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's Basilica, the Pantheon, the Trevi Fountain, Piazza Navona, and maybe one neighborhood like Trastevere for an evening. That's it. You will be moving constantly. You will eat lunch in places you chose because they were convenient, not because they were good. You will not have time to wander, to sit in a piazza for an hour, to find a church you weren't planning to enter and discover a Caravaggio inside.
But for someone on a tight schedule, 3 days is sometimes all they have.
Then take 3 days. Rome with 3 days is better than no Rome at all. But understand what you're choosing. You're choosing a highlights reel. You're not choosing the city. And honestly, day 3 on a 3-day Rome trip is brutal. Your feet hurt, your eyes are tired, you've absorbed so much information that the next monument blurs into the last one. There's a thing some travelers call Stendhal syndrome, named after the French writer who got overwhelmed in Florence. You can get a version of it in Rome on a compressed schedule. The mind shuts down.
Okay, so 3 is doable but punishing. What about 4?
4 is meaningfully better. 4 days lets you have one slower day, or one day where you take a half day off in the middle. 4 days means you can split the Vatican from the ancient sites instead of doing them back to back. 4 days means you can do one evening in Trastevere properly, sitting down for a long dinner instead of rushing through a meal, because you have to be somewhere at 8.
And 5?
5 is the sweet spot. I'll say this loudly. 5 days is the right amount of time for a first-time visit to Rome. 5 days lets you do the major sites without exhausting yourself, build in 2 evenings in different neighborhoods, take a half day to slow down completely, and still have a buffer for something you didn't plan, which is where Rome surprises you. 5 days gives you the room to come back to a place you loved on day 1 and experience it differently.
And a week? What does a week unlock?
A week, by which I mean 7 nights, opens up the city in a different way. You can take a day trip. Ostia Antica is 40 minutes away on the train and is a complete Roman city by the sea, almost as well preserved as Pompeii, with a fraction of the crowds. You can spend a morning in a less famous neighborhood like Testaccio, or the Aventine Hill with the keyhole view through to St. Peter's. You can visit the catacombs along the Appian Way. You can have an unplanned day. The unplanned day is the day many people remember most.
Okay, let's structure this. If a listener has 5 days, how should they think about pacing? Because I imagine the temptation is to front-load everything and collapse by day 4.
That is exactly what happens. Let me give you a principle first, and then we'll talk about structure. The principle is this. Rome is not a city you can do in straight lines. The geography is dense, the streets are irregular, and the major sites are not arranged for tourist convenience, so you don't plan day by day, you plan zone by zone. Day 1 is the ancient zone. Day 2 might be the Vatican. Day 3 is the historic center, which is the Pantheon, the piazzas, the Trevi Fountain, all of which are within an easy walk of each other. Day 4 is a neighborhood day. Day 5 is your flex day.
Zone by zone, that makes sense. But within a zone, how do you avoid burnout? Because the ancient zone alone, with the Colosseum, the Forum, and the Palatine, is enormous.
It is. And this is where most first-timers underestimate the physical demand. Those 3 sites share a single combined ticket, but together they cover a huge area of uneven ground, with very little shade and no real seating, until you find a low piece of ancient marble to sit on. A thorough visit takes 4 to 5 hours. That is, 4 to 5 hours on your feet, in the sun, looking at things that require some context to make sense of.
And without context, what happens?
Without context, you walk through the Forum and see a field of broken columns, and you have no idea what you're looking at. You take a photo of the Arch of Septimius Severus because it's photogenic, but you don't know who Septimius Severus was, or why this enormous arch celebrates his Parthian victories, or why it sits exactly where it sits in the layout of the Forum. You see the Basilica Julia, and it looks like a bunch of foundation stones, and you don't realize it was a vast public hall that Julius Caesar started building, where law courts met, where Romans came to do business, where the whole machinery of civic life ran for centuries.
And there's a difference between knowing that and not knowing that.
A huge difference. The ruins don't speak for themselves anymore. They need to be reanimated. This is the kind of thing where, when you actually get to Rome, having an audio companion on the ground really helps. We cover the Arch of Septimius Severus and the Basilica Julia in detail in our Roman Forum tour in the Rome Audio Tour Guide offline app, but that's for when you arrive. Right now, what matters is knowing that the ancient zone is not a quick check-the-box site. Plan a full day around it. Eat lunch beforehand or pack water and snacks. And don't try to do the Vatican on the same day. People try this. They die a small death by sundown.
Got it. So day 1 is Ancient Zone, day 2 is Vatican, day 3 is Historic Center. What does a good day 3 look like, the Historic Center day, just to make this concrete?
A good Historic Center day starts with breakfast at a real bar with a coffee standing at the counter, not a sit-down hotel buffet. Then a slow walk to the Pantheon, getting there by 9 before the tour groups. The Pantheon is paid entry now, but the line moves quickly with a pre-booked ticket. You spend 45 minutes inside. You look up at the oculus, the round opening in the dome. You watch the shaft of light move across the marble floor. Then you walk 5 minutes to Piazza Navona. You have a second coffee in a place that's not in the piazza itself, but on a side street where locals go. You wander west to Campo dei Fiori. See the morning market while it's still set up. Look at the produce. Smell the fish. You have lunch in the Jewish ghetto, which is right there, and you eat carciofi alla Giudia, the deep-fried artichoke that's a Roman specialty. Then a long break in the afternoon. Then you come back out at 6 for the Trevi Fountain and the Spanish Steps when the crowd's thin and the light is good.
And that's one day.
That's one day. And notice, that whole day, you didn't take a single bus or metro. Everything was within walking distance.
Which is the other thing first-timers don't realize. The Historic Center is compact.
Very compact. From the Colosseum to St. Peter's is about 35-40 minutes on foot, and you would pass through almost every famous square along the way. People plan their days as if Rome were Los Angeles, and they end up wasting time on transport that they didn't need.
Let me ask the burnout question more directly. What's the warning sign that you've overscheduled?
There's a clear sign. You stop enjoying things. By the third day, if you've packed too much in, you walk into a Renaissance church with a Caravaggio painting on the wall, and you think, oh, another church. That's a tragedy. You've come all the way to Rome, and your brain has stopped registering beauty. The way to avoid this is to schedule, deliberately, periods of doing nothing. A long lunch. An afternoon in a piazza with a glass of wine and a book. A nap. These are not lost hours. They are the hours that let you receive what comes next.
I love that. The hours that let you receive what comes next.
It's how Italians live. The pause is not a gap. The pause is part of the meal.
Okay, let's turn to our third big topic. When to go. Because we've talked about heat, we've alluded to crowds. Let's go season by season and tell people what each one actually feels like. Start with summer, since we've already begun there.
Summer in Rome runs from late June through early September. July and August are the worst of it. The city is hot, as we said. The locals leave. Many small restaurants close for 2 or 3 weeks in August because their owners go to the coast. There is a national holiday called Ferragosto on August 15th when much of the country shuts down.
So the city empties out of locals, just when tourists are arriving in the largest numbers.
Exactly. The tourists who remain are mostly other foreigners, the prices are still high, and the heat is genuinely punishing. I would tell most first-time visitors, do not go in July or August unless you have no other choice. If you absolutely must, go early in the morning, rest at midday, come out again at 6 or 7.
Is there any upside to summer?
The light is extraordinary. Long evenings, golden light from 7 until almost 9 in late June. Outdoor concerts, including opera in the baths of Caracalla, which is magical. Summer also means the city is sometimes emptier than you'd expect on a Sunday in August because everyone has fled. But the trade-off is the heat. And now, with climate change, the heat is genuinely a health issue, not just a discomfort.
Okay, so summer is on the warning list. What about fall?
Fall in Rome is one of the most beautiful seasons. September is still warm, sometimes very warm, but the worst of the heat has broken by mid-month. October is sublime. Daytime temperatures around 20-22 degrees Celsius, which is the low 70s. Nights cool but not cold. The light shifts. It becomes softer, more golden. The summer crowds thin slightly. The wine harvest is happening in the countryside, and on Roman menus you start seeing porcini mushrooms, chestnuts, pumpkin, and game. The cuisine pivots.
October sounds perfect.
October is, for many people, the perfect month. The only caveat is that everyone knows this, so it is still busy, just not as overwhelming as June. By early November, the rains come. Not constant, but real. Some afternoons get gray, the cobblestones get slippery, you need an umbrella. Late November starts to feel like the off-season, with shorter days and an empty feel to the city.
Winter. Talk to me about winter in Rome.
Winter in Rome is a secret. Visitors miss it because they imagine cold and gray, and they go to Paris or Vienna instead. But Roman winter, from December through February, has its own beauty. The temperatures are mild by Northern European standards, usually around 8 to 12 degrees Celsius during the day, which is the high 40s to the low 50s Fahrenheit. It rarely snows. Occasionally a cold snap, but mostly bearable with a coat and a scarf.
And the crowds?
The crowds are dramatically reduced. The Colosseum in January can be visited without a queue. The Vatican museums are still busy because they're indoors, but everywhere else you can move. You can sit in a piazza and not share it with a tour group. You can eat in a famous restaurant without booking 3 weeks ahead. Prices are lower. Hotels are cheaper.
What's the catch?
2 catches. First, the days are short. Sunset is at 4:30 in December. So you have fewer daylight hours, and outdoor sites that close at sunset, like the Forum, have shorter visiting windows. Second, the weather is unpredictable. Some January days are crystalline, blue skies, 16 degrees. You don't even need a jacket. Other days it rains continuously from morning to night, and the historic center floods at the lower points. You have to be flexible.
What about Christmas? Is that a special time?
Christmas in Rome is special. The nativity displays in the churches are extraordinary. The Vatican has its enormous tree and nativity scene in St. Peter's Square. There are concerts in beautiful churches. Midnight Mass is unforgettable for anyone, religious or not.
Is it busy?
December 23rd to 26th is busy. The Christmas markets, the holiday energy, the families. It's lovely, but it's not quiet.
And New Year's?
New Year's Eve is loud. Fireworks everywhere, often illegal, often dangerous. I generally tell visitors to enjoy it, but stay out of the crowds at the Colosseum or the Spanish Steps that night. Find a restaurant with a good cenone, the long New Year's Eve dinner, and let the city explode around you from inside. January 2nd onward, the city goes quiet and stays quiet until February.
What about February? Is that the deepest off-season?
February is the quietest month. Cold, often rainy, gray, but cheap, empty, and atmospheric. If you don't mind the weather, February is when Rome feels most like itself, without the costume of tourism.
Okay, spring.
Spring in Rome is glorious and complicated. April and May are beautiful. The wisteria blooms on old walls. The terraces fill up. The light is bright and clear. Temperatures are perfect, 15 to 22 degrees Celsius, but April and May are also the most crowded months alongside June. School groups arrive in April. Easter brings enormous numbers of pilgrims to the Vatican.
Easter must completely transform the Vatican area.
Completely. If your trip overlaps with Holy Week, especially Easter Sunday, expect St. Peter's Square to be a sea of people, with screens set up in every adjacent street. If you want to be there for that, plan accordingly. If you don't, avoid the week before Easter entirely.
When does Easter fall? That changes every year, right?
It changes. Late March to late April. Check the date for the year you're traveling and plan around it. The 2 weeks centered on Easter are the single most intense crowding period of the entire year in Vatican-adjacent Rome.
So if someone says, I want to come in April, what do you tell them?
I ask what week. The 3rd week of April, after Easter, is often perfect. The week before Easter is the worst possible week. Same month, 2 completely different cities.
That's a useful distinction. Late March?
Late March is a beautiful in-between. Some warm days, some still cool. Crowds are building, but not yet at peak. If you can travel mid-March to early April, before Easter falls, you'll find some of the best conditions of the entire year.
And May?
May is gorgeous and absolutely heaving if you go in May. Accept the crowds, plan accordingly, book everything in advance. There's no avoiding the volume of visitors in May. But the weather is so reliably good that many people consider it worth the trade-off.
If you had to give a single recommendation to a first-timer who could pick any month, what would you say?
October, then mid-March to early April before Easter, then late September. Those 3 windows give you the best balance of weather, light, food, and manageable crowds. If you can travel in those windows, that's where I'd send you.
And the months to avoid?
July and August for the heat, the week before Easter for the crowds, and the period from December 23rd to January 1st, only if you don't like crowds at the major sites. The rest of the year, you can find a version of Rome you'll love.
Let me ask one more question before we wrap. We've been talking about expectations, length, and timing. Is there a kind of visitor for whom Rome is the wrong choice altogether?
It's a fair question. Rome is hard if you have serious mobility limitations. The cobblestones are not friendly to wheelchairs or walkers. Many older buildings have no elevators, and even some metro stations are not fully accessible. It's getting better, slowly, but it's still a challenging city in this respect. Rome is also hard if you don't like crowds at all, anywhere, and you can't travel in winter. And Rome is hard if you're looking for a relaxing beach holiday. It's not that. It's a working city with ancient bones, and it demands your attention.
But for everyone else?
For everyone else, with the right preparation, the right timing, the right shoes, and the right amount of time, Rome is one of the great experiences available to a traveler. It is not a city you visit and forget. It is a city that stays in you. You go home, and you find yourself, weeks later, thinking about a particular light on a particular wall, or the taste of a meal in a place whose name you didn't write down. That's what Rome does.
And that's why we're spending 12 episodes on it, instead of doing a 1-hour overview.
Exactly. Rome rewards depth, and you can prepare for depth before you arrive.
So, to recap quickly, today we covered honest expectations. Crowds are real, but concentrated. Cobblestones demand proper shoes. Heat in summer is no longer survivable as a casual tourist. And Rome rewards patience, the kind of patience that means giving a place 45 minutes instead of 5. We covered trip length. 3 days is possible but punishing, 4 is better, 5 is the sweet spot for most first-timers. 7 gives you a day trip, a slow neighborhood, and the gift of an unplanned day. And we covered timing. October 1st, then mid-March to early April before Easter, then late September. Summer at your peril. Winter as a secret. Made beautiful but crowded.
That's a good recap. And I'd add one more thing. Whatever you choose it on purpose. Don't drift into a Rome trip. Decide what you want from it. Are you here for the ancient history, the art, the food, a romantic getaway, a family education? You can have any of these things in Rome, but not all of them, in 3 days. So decide, and let the decision shape your planning.
Decide on purpose. I like that as a takeaway.
It's the rest of the series, really. Every choice you make from here, where to stay, how to get there, which tickets to book, where to eat, those choices are easier when you've already decided what kind of trip you want.
Next episode, we get practical with neighborhoods. Where should you actually sleep in Rome, and why does it matter more here than in most cities? Giovanni will walk us through the 5 mainstay zones and help you match your accommodation to your trip. Episode 3 after that gets into arrivals and transport. Both airports, the trains, the buses, the taxis, and why most first-timers end up walking almost everywhere. And then we'll move into tickets, individual sites, food, neighborhoods, and finally, in episode 12, we put it all together into a real itinerary.
It's a lot. But that's Rome. It's a lot. And it's worth it.
When you do get to Rome, the Rome Audio Tour Guide offline app, which is the companion to this podcast, has self-guided walking tours, offline maps, and audio stories for everything we'll be discussing. For now, you have us. So save the date in your calendar for the month you've just decided on, start thinking about your trip length, and we'll see you next week for episode 2.
Ciao to everyone. Buon viaggio when the time comes.
Thanks for listening to Rome Before You Go. I'm Sarah with Giovanni, and we'll be back next week.